Hey everyone, it's Jennifer with Rooted in the Rock, and I've got something dropping from the education branch right now. Hey everyone, welcome to Rooted in the Rock. I'm so glad you're here. Today I wanted to talk just a little bit about the writing process. I had mentioned this in one of my previous videos and I was like, oh wait, that's a whole nother video for another day. So the writing process. This is something that is really important to learn, really, when you're teaching writing, when you're trying to teach someone how to write. You know, if you think back to when you were a kid and the teacher was like, oh, we're going to write a story, or I'm going to write, like in Christmas Story, a theme.
I want you to write a theme.
I always think of that one. So anyway, you know, and collectively the class groans, oh, we have to write, because you think I have to write this thing, and you sit down and you're going to write it. And if you don't know the steps of the writing process, if you haven't been taught to go through that, it's like this big thing that takes so much effort. And you're like, oh, how am I going to do it? I don't know what to write, But the writing process, 5 simple, easy steps. If you break it up into these manageable pieces, it's so much easier and it's not as big of a huge thing. Like I said, I think I said this in another video way back, but I had a professor when I was doing my master's degree, and I was dealing with a lot of things, and I had a new baby, and I don't remember if this was before she came or after she came, but there was a lot going on, right? And she was like, how do you eat an elephant? And I hated it when she would tell one piece at a time, because I was always like, ah. Anyway, it's true. You got to break it up into smaller, manageable pieces. But especially kids and adults who may have ADD or other issues, some of us aren't as good. Like you get better over time as you learn to do it. But some kids, especially kids, need someone to help them break it down into those pieces. So when you go to writing, the writing process, there are 5 easy steps. It's pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, I'm just going to keep it all the same, and publishing, okay? Pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing, okay? So the first one, pre-writing, okay? That's when you're brainstorming and organizing your information.
But we're trying to brainstorm.
That was one of the things I had mentioned about the BJU curriculum, was in their grammar and the writing. They had the way they organized their writing chapters is they kind of went through those steps with you, and they would give you a graphic organizer. Graphic organizers, by the way, is another thing that I have set aside for a completely different video, because there's a lot to say about that. But graphic organizers are pretty great and very, very helpful. But with pre-writing, you're brainstorming and organizing. You have your idea, you know what you're supposed to write about, and you're getting all those ideas down, good or bad. Just get them all out, figure out, and then pick what you want to do, organize it into the right order, etc. Okay? Pre-writing is when you're giving yourself a basic framework, okay? So if you just sit down and say, I'm going to write this whole story, I tell them, I always tell my kids, my school kids, I'm like, when an author, how do you think we get, Charlotte's Web or whatever book, how do we think we get this book? He didn't just sit down and said, I'm going to write a book today. Ding, here's my book. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. They go through, it takes a long time, and their first version is never, ever, ever the one that gets published, right? They go through anyway, so pre-writing, organize it, give yourself a basic framework. Like in the beginning, I'm going to talk about this, here I'm going to talk about this, etc. Okay? Pre-writing. It's very, very important.
Oh, it's very important.
Okay, then drafting. That's your rough draft. It's called a rough draft for a reason, okay? That is not your final draft. That is your first draft, and it's going to get marked up, okay? Rough draft, your drafting phase. That's when you're taking that brainstorming and organization that you did in the pre-writing, and you're putting it out into your word structure, into your writing format, right? That's where you begin to flesh out your story, okay? And never ever ever worry about it being perfect the first time.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Don't ever expect it to be that. Just get your ideas out, get that fleshed out, and then you can go back and change it later, because step 3 is revising. Okay? Revising, you're still, and remind your kids, even when you get to this point, you're not worrying about spelling, you're not worrying about punctuation or any of those mechanical issues like that. Okay? Do not even think about it. Okay? You want to if I'm sitting and I'm writing a story, different kids have their spelling on varying levels and punctuation and etc. So when you're writing a story and you're trying to say something, if you're constantly having to stop, is that spelled right? How do I spell that? You're never going to get anywhere. And it completely interrupts your thought, and then you don't remember what you were going to say. When you're getting those words out, you need to let it flow, right? Get it all out on the paper. Then you revise. Revising is going back, and you're finding all those places where, I used the word big too many times. What are some other words I can use, more interesting words I can use instead of big?
They're ginormous!
Something, that's where you replace words, okay? You might reformat sentences. You might take sentences out. You might say, you know what, I need a little more detail here. So you might add sentences, all those kinds of things. You might take an entire paragraph and shift it down somewhere else. It's just revising is the big work monkey part where you're just in the I'm sorry, I don't know how to describe it, but
It's like working with a monkey.
Revising is where you're getting down and dirty in there. You're moving things and changing things, and sometimes you might not want to change that much, or you might not have that much to revise. You never know. But also always have another pair of eyes look at it. I tell the kids, you think it, along with that, the author just sit down and plunk out a book. I said, he's not the only one that looks at it. He sends it to an editor, and that editor looks at it and they pass it back and forth. Goodness knows how many times.
It's been 84 years.
The editor says, oh, we need more detail here, or we need this, or change the spelling, or whatever. Like, you always want another set of eyes to look at it, because they're going to see things. You know what you're meaning to say, and so a lot of times your brain can just kind of skip over something and not notice spelling mistakes or the way something is worded, because you know what you meant. But when somebody else looks at it with their brain and their eyes, they can help you catch things. So when you're on to revising, it's very, very good to have a partner or someone take a look at it and give you feedback. Do you have to take all of their feedback and do all the things they say? No, it's your writing piece. However, it can be very, very, very helpful, and they can catch some things that maybe you missed, right? And sometimes the two of you will miss, you could try having more than one revising and editing partner, okay?
Good old-fashioned teamwork.
So revising, you're changing words and sentences, making sure you have enough interesting language and enough detail, maybe making sure you could be making sure something's not too complicated, things like that, okay? Then editing. Step 4 is editing. That is when you're proofreading and correcting spelling and punctuation and mechanical issues. Okay, so like spacing, okay, maybe we need to break this. This needs to be a separate paragraph. That's kind of revising and editing. But editing is, you're checking your spelling, your capitalization, your punctuation, all of that. That's like the polishing cloth, okay? Like when you clean something, when you wipe a counter down or a mirror, you're wiping it with the regular cloth, with the soap or the water or whatever you're using, and then you have another cloth you go over the back end where you dry it and polish it, right?
Wax on, wax off.
So that on editing, it's like you're polishing, right? You've got all the big meaty stuff done, then you're going back and you're fixing just all the little bits and making sure there's nothing of the rest. And then the 5th step, last step is publishing. Now publishing To publish a piece is not necessarily like a big time publisher and it's in a bookstore, okay? Publishing something is publicly sharing it, okay? So for kids, in the sense of kids in school, publishing is like either, reading it in front of the class or putting it up on the wall at school, those kinds of things, okay? Publishing is publicly sharing releasing your piece to the public for them to read and enjoy.
Now go! Fly! Be free!
And that's it. All 5 steps. Number 1, pre-writing. Number 2, drafting. Number 3, revising. Number 4, editing. Number 5, publishing. And if you're a teacher in a classroom or even a homeschooler, there's something that I've used for years and years and years. I got it on I think I found the same one. It's been a long time, so I was like, oh, it might not even be up there anymore. But there's a website called Teachers Pay Teachers. There's all kinds of websites that do things like this, but Teachers Pay Teachers is a popular one around here. And it's where teachers, kids, when you need something, a lot of times you make it yourself. So a lot of times teacher will have things that they've, curriculum or lesson plans or forms of sheets, whatever that they've made, and they put it on there for other teachers to find, supplement and buy. You most of the time it's only a couple of bucks. There's a lot of stuff on there that's free though. And this one, I printed it out and I laminated it, and I've always put it up in my classroom if I'm teaching grammar and writing that year. I always have the steps of the writing process on the wall to try to help remind them when they're not only hearing it from me, but also seeing it on the wall. That's just another level of reminding them the proper thing to do. And you can make your own.
I'll do it myself!
You can find all kinds of stuff like that on Teachers Pay Teachers, or you could just, Google it and find where people have it on their individual sites as well. Things that I have made, I'm going to start sharing things like that. I'll be putting those up on my website as well. But for this is one that I always used. I had gotten it. It was a freebie one from Teacher Pay Teacher. And it was basically just a 1-page little cute poster of each step of the writing process. Super, super handy to have on the wall if you're teaching anybody writing, and it helps remind them, oh, don't worry about this. It can take a lot of the stress out of writing.
I feel better.
And it's as simple as that. That's everything. So hopefully that helped. If this was, if you enjoyed this or if this was helpful, please remember to put a thumbs up on the video. Let me know that this was content that was helpful to you. Subscribe if you want to see the things coming in the future on the channel, and I will see you next time.
My name is Erwin Fletcher.
Not Fletch. Us. Spies like us. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's the old podcast music I've got in my head.